Hello everyone, George DeSantis here with the look at the market for the week ending February 2nd, 2018. As we usually do, let's take a look at the disclaimer and recommend that you read it. It's important to understand that this video is only for educational purposes and not advice to buy or sell any stocks or any kinds of securities. So let's begin, as we usually do, with a weekly chart of the S&P 500. And see what we find here. First of all, we should note that the 4 exponential moving average is still above the 9. 9 is above 30. So according to the moving averages and the relationships between them, we still have technically an uptrend. The parabolic, this white dot, is still below the most recent bar, which is of course last week's bar. So technically there is no, according to the parabolic, there is no indication to reverse the uptrend of the weekly chart. Now the volume wasn't very high. In fact, it was lower. It closed lower than usual. So that's telling us that the market seemed to have fallen on its own inertia. Not very much volume, not a whole lot of selling action. So it fell on its own inertia. What else could we notice? Histogram, MACD histogram came down, but we still don't see a divergence here. That may eventually develop, but it ain't here now. And these last 3 indicators here, RSI 12, percent-R, and the sum of the rate of change, all trended down for the week. So basically, we still seem to have an uptrend on the weekly chart, although one might not expect that given what we saw on, especially on Friday, when the S&P dropped 666 points. So let's take a look at the daily chart, see what we find there. On the daily chart, we can see that the 4 crossed below the 9, and the 9 is now still above the 30, but it looks as though it's approaching 30 very rapidly. The most recent bar last Friday was a very bearish bar, and it closed just about halfway below the 50% retracement and the 618 retracement level. And in the past, this has oftentimes materialized in a low or a bottom, because it's sometimes referred to as a bear trap, where people are expecting this thing to go much lower and it doesn't, rebounds from here. We'll see if that's the case. But in this instance, we can see that the parabolic yellow dot reversed now, and it's above the current bars, the recent bars. So the trend is down on the daily chart. How far down will it go? That's another question. I'm anticipating that it's going to find some support here. But again, that's just my word for what it's worth. The volume wasn't very high. It was normal, no more than normal. MACD histogram became more bearish, and RSI 12 is now sitting at the 40% line. We hope it doesn't go much lower than that. Williams percentile crossed below the 50% line, and the sum of the rate of change indicator issued a sell signal here. So we have conflicting evidence here with the weekly chart versus the daily chart. Weekly chart still seems to be in an uptrend, technically anyway, whereas the daily chart is in a downtrend based on a number of these indicators. So now let's take a look at a different picture. Using Best Choice software, let's take a look at the SPDR, which is the ETF of the S&P 500, SPY. It reflects the movement of the S&P very accurately. So what we can see here is that the S&P became very overbought. Let me get rid of the crosshairs. The S&P became very overbought as of last Friday, as of Friday a week ago, let's say, because Monday's data shows that Monday's bar was a bearish bar. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the whole week we dropped from this high, which we all are aware of by now. But where we are now is that we're in oversold territory. The extreme number is now 14.7. So this is the 10% line, this is the 90% line, this is the 50% line. So this S&P is now showing us that it's really very oversold now. So given that and what we've seen on the other charts, we wonder how far down will this thing continue to go. Doesn't seem to go much below that 10% line. So it may look encouraging from point of view of bull, you know, if you have stocks. And I do still have some stocks. We'll discuss those later. So that's what we see on best choice for the S&P. It became very oversold, very overbought rather, and now it's oversold. So let's start looking at some of the individual stocks that we often look at. We'll start with Apple. This is one that I owned a lot of, and just had a very large position for the size of my portfolio. So I actually sold Apple early last week because it started breaking down here. If you look at the weekly chart, the 4 crossed below the 9, but I sold it off the daily chart, but it was a little too late. I'll show you that. But Apple is now broken down. We don't know how far down this thing is going to go, but I had to get out. So let's take a look at the daily. We'll see why. See, the daily chart started breaking down right here, right in this area here. Parabolic above the bar, and especially in this area and this day here. But I sold it probably on Tuesday of last week, which was a little late because you can see the breakdown beginning to occur. But hindsight is always perfect. Parabolic was above the bar here, so taking profits here or selling it out here might have been a better option. In any case, you could see also that RSI started breaking down. Williams percentile broke below the 50% line. These are all indications that this thing was in trouble. And there are a lot of news items about Apple, about the Model 10 and the iPhone 10, etc. So I figured let me get out and stand by for now. We could put that money to good use. Another one that I own, and I haven't sold this one, and you'll see, I hope you could see why. On the weekly chart, Facebook still looks very, very bullish, to me anyway. The parabolic is still below the current bars, and MACD is trending up. MACD histogram, the volume increased here a bit too. And all these other indicators are still looking better than they looked on the Apple chart. That's a weekly chart. On the daily chart, you can see that the 4 is above the 9, 9 above 30. Yes, we had a bearish bar here, so I have to keep a close watch on Facebook. Don't want to give back, you know, the gains that I have, so I won't hesitate to sell it if I see a further breakdown, if I see any kind of a breakdown here, because we really don't know where this market is headed right now. I am anticipating a rebound, but who knows? Let's take a look at something else. Take a look at a few more stocks. Here's Berkshire, the B shares, BRKB, and what we see here is a bearish engulfing candle. So that doesn't portend well for the future. It looks as though we might come down further, and Berkshire became very overbought. I'll show it to you on best choice. Let's take a look. See, Berkshire became very overbought, and then it pulled back. It pulled back to about a 50% line. It's now at 56 on the extremes here. So we don't know whether it will drop even further back closer to the 10% line, but that's a real possibility. So be careful with Berkshire. Let's take a look. And here's a weekly chart of Visa, one that I own, and I still own it, didn't sell, and it looks pretty good. We still have the 4 above the 9, 9 above 30, parabolic below the most recent bar, but we do have a bearish engulfing candle. This totally engulfs the body of this candle. So a little caution here. Depends on your perspective, whether you want to hold it like I do for the long haul. But, nothing is forever. So I won't hesitate to sell it just like I did with Apple if it continues to break down. Now on the daily chart, let's take a look. You see on the daily chart, we have the 4 crossing below the 9. And now we are really looking as though we can go even down to the 50-day moving average. So a little caution here. Some caution here is desirable. Let's take a look at the best choice chart. I'll show you very similar to Berkshire. You can see how it became very overbought and now it's pulled back to about the 44% line just below this 50% line here. What I like about Visa is that these extreme lines are very tightly bunched together. So there's very little volatility. And if you do get a pullback, it shouldn't be a big one. So that's why I'm holding it for now. Here's a daily chart of Alibaba or Baba. I owned it, but I sold it. I'll show you why. First of all, we had this bearish divergence of MACD. And that was one of the main reasons why I sold it. And I had a nice gain up to here anyway, up to Monday last week. So I sold it late on Monday, I believe it was, when I saw it was coming down. Let's take a look at one more. On second thought, before we go to another stock, let me show you something else with Baba. Baba became overbought here. And this is why I sold it when it became overbought. That was one of the reasons. It became overbought Monday, Tuesday, and I figured let me get out and take the gain. Nothing wrong with taking a profit. So let's move on. Here's the FTY, the ETF of the IBD 50 that some of us own. It's not something that I intend to do much trading with. So right now, if you look at the weekly chart, it did pull back with the rest of the market, of course. So it closed right about at the 30 weighted moving average. And you've heard me say that closing between the 9 and the 30 is really the buy zone, as long as you have a weekly chart that's trending up. So this is a chart that's trending up. You close below between the 9 and the 30. Hopefully we'll find a bottom here and we continue to go up. I haven't sold it. It's one of those core holdings in one of my accounts. We can take a look at something else. We have time for a couple more. Here's Microsoft. We have a weekly chart of Microsoft. The 4 is still above the 9 above the 30, parabolic below the most recent bar. Bearish bar last week, of course, with everything else. MACD, or rather the volume increased a bit here. And MACD trended down, but there is no divergence on MACD. So I suspect that Microsoft is in pretty good shape. RSI 12 looks okay. Williams percent are above the 20% line. And some of the rate of change indicator is still in pretty bullish territory. So I still own Microsoft. This is one that I haven't sold. I only sold a couple of stocks, which is Apple and Alibaba. There may have been one more that I don't recall now. In any case, that's what we have. Now I'm going to say close it for the week. Yeah, it was a tough week last week. You had to make some decisions. Do you hold something? Do you sell it? What do you sell? When do you sell? It's where we test ourselves and the market tests us to see if we're really serious about what we're doing and if we have the courage to stay with our convictions. Enjoy the Super Bowl. I'll talk to you next week again. We'll do a similar review of the market.